Hey everyone, a special shout out to you. You support this podcast by listening to the show, reading the newsletter, and sometimes buying us a cup of coffee, which we greatly appreciate. We're still in the early part of season 11, and we wouldn't have gotten this far without you. So thank you. And if you would like to help us keep going, we certainly wouldn't say no to a few more cups of coffee. Find and click the Buy Us a Coffee link in this podcast's show notes. Now, on to the show. Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Season 11, Episode 3 of the Coffee People Podcast, which is part of the Roast West Coast Coffee Network and presented by Roastery Coffee Packaging, roastery.com. That's where you'll find them. I'm Ryan Woldt, and this is the show where I get to meet and get behind the scenes of coffee industry stories. Today, I'm chatting with Mauricio Botero, also known as Mo. He's the founder and CEO of Botero Coffee Club, which is actually two separate businesses. One here in the States that is importing green coffee and roasting coffee for sale, and another in Colombia, which is operating a coffee farm and processing facility with even bigger plans on the horizon. Head to BoteroCoffeeClub.com while you're listening today to shop coffees or to learn more about their efforts in Colombia, and settle in, take a deep breath, and engage with the aroma of that cup of coffee you're about to enjoy. Get ready to be inspired by Mo's entrepreneurial and coffee journey, because it's time for another Coffee People conversation. This one with the CEO and founder of Botero Coffee Club, Mauricio Botero, also known as Mo.
Sure. So my name is Mauricio Botero. It's much easier to say when I'm in Colombia than here in the United States, but a lot of people just call me Mo. My company is named Botero Coffee Club, but it's two companies. So we have an American company, and then we also have a Colombian company, which is a big part of our story here. The one in Colombia is called Botero Coffee Club Colombia. And I am the CEO and co-founder. So I help run a team here of 4 business partners of mine. We're all still a small company, so we all are owners of this company. But I'm the one that came up with the idea, and the rest of the team is the one to help me push it forward and make it a reality.
And on the American side, you're based out of where?
So we're based all over the place. I'm in Northern Virginia. We have a guy in Orlando, Florida, another person in Panama City Beach, Florida, another one in Austin, Texas, and then another one in San Diego. He's an active duty Marine, so he's currently based in Camp Pendleton.
I'm only smiling because during my formative college years, I would go to Panama City Beach every spring.
Probably not stuff we should record about those experiences, I'm sure, but they were probably PG rated and
very
great.
PG rated. And on the other side, on the Colombian side, where are you located down there, and why there? We'll jump right into that.
Yeah, we are located in Colombia. Their states are called departments or departamentos. So we're located in the department of Quindío. Why? Because that's where my family's from, and that's where their family's from. I'm a first generation Colombian American, and I'm the first guy born in Miami with my sister, but all of my mom and dad's family is from the city of Armenia, which is the capital city of Quindío. It's the second smallest state in Colombia. But it is primo real estate for coffee. It is in the coffee axis, or known in the World Heritage Site of the Coffee Triangle of Colombia. And I have that business in Colombia shared with a business partner, Colombian. He is a expert in coffee processing. His name is Dayan, Dayan. So our American business is in business with him. So we own 65% of the company. We partnered with him. He owns 35% of the business. And we're based out of Quindío.
I want to get into all of that and learn more about the relationship between the two and what that means to you. But before we do, I want to learn a little bit more about who you are and how you got here in the first place. So we should start with something extremely important. What's your favorite Keanu Reeves movie?
Wow, that's a tough one. I mean, it was Point Break before, but after John Wick, It's got to be John Wick.
I have to say, I resisted John Wick for a long time. I had heard about the dog situation, which is something that I emotionally couldn't handle. But I recently just sat down, fast forwarded to that little part, and watched it, and I came away like raving about it. And I made my wife sit and watch it like that same day. She
Yeah.
was not as enthused, but I was pretty excited about it.
Yeah, the military guy in me says, man, I love all those cool fight scenes, but it's Keanu Reeves actually doing it. That's what makes me geek out about that movie so much. Is he's the one that trained on how to do those stunts.
Yeah, very cool when you know that the actor is the one doing it. I think it does matter more. You know, Tom Cruise has always been that guy.
For
Uh,
sure.
he's insane, but like also knowing that he's really doing it does matter when I'm watching the movie, especially now when I have a hard time believing anything I'm seeing on Instagram or in movies or wherever, right? It's nice to know it's tangible.
Exactly.
You mentioned the military. I'm wondering if you give us a little backstory about how you got to where you're at. You know, who are you, and you know, did you have an experience with coffee at some point that stuck with you?
Yeah, sure. So I was born in Miami, Florida. 18 years, lived there my entire life before I joined the military. Born into a Colombian bubble, a South American, South Florida bubble. Miami's not like the rest of the country. So my first language was Spanish. I got to kindergarten and I was still speaking Spanish only. My Sunday mornings were going to my aunt's house drinking café con leche. That was just normal café con leche or chocolate. Colombian chocolates are a really big cultural thing for us in the mornings. And then growing up in Miami, Cuban coffee is a part of the culture. I mean, even at teenage years, you're getting to learn what cafecito is, coladas, cortaditos. I had to get out of Miami. I wasn't doing anything. I was that typical smart kid with no initiative or push. And so I decided on a whim to join the Marine Corps right after 9/11, but not because of the guys that were joining after 9/11. I was joining alongside of all those folks who wanted revenge. I just wanted to do computers and get out of Miami and go to Japan or travel the world. So I went to Virginia. I got stuck in Virginia. Best thing that happened for my career, though, I knew I was going to do computers in my life, and I joined the Marine Corps and became a specialist in IT and data centers and computers at the right place to be here in Northern Virginia. I did that for 4 years. Got married pretty young. Did that for 4 years. Switched to the reserves because I wanted to raise a family and I didn't want to travel and do the whole 3 years. Every 3 years you go somewhere else. Stayed in IT. Started being an expert in my field at that point in my late 20s, and started getting into the idea of passive income. Not being in the rat race my entire life, which is the seed that got planted into why I'm in coffee. But I wasn't really into specialty coffee yet. Fast forward, I got my first sales job in IT. And that's when I started making real money and going to real coffee shops. And I could afford nice things like bourbon and wine. And that's when the light bulb moment happened when I went to a specialty coffee shop for the first time, paid $6 for a pour over. And I was like, this is different. In the military, we prided ourselves in drinking the darkest coffee, the strongest coffee. It's better than dark coffee. Double that. That's going to be more manly, more macho. So it took a while to break out of that custom. Also, from my Cuban coffee background in Miami, there was a lot of dark roast coffee in my life.
Yeah.
But when I had that first specialty cup, after getting introduced to the palette of bourbon and wine and cigars in my sales job, I'm like, I'm hooked. This is what I need to be drinking.
Bourbon, wine, and cigars sounds like a sales job to me, as someone who's done many sales jobs.
100%. Yeah. Do you know how to play golf? Can
Yep,
we drink nice wine? And then we'll do a deal.
absolutely.
Silly as it
The
is, right?
deal is kind of arbitrary. It's the other stuff that builds that relationship that you're kind of stuck in that old world. I used to play so much golf. Uh, not anymore. You have that first pour over, and there's something there to you that you go, this is not like the coffee I've been doing before. It's a long way, in my opinion, long jump from there to being the founder, co-founder of a coffee company, not just, a coffee shop here in America, but a coffee company spanning borders. Fill us in. How does that happen? Where do you go from having that cup of coffee to thinking, maybe the sales thing isn't where I want to be? I'm going to move over here.
Yeah, it did take a couple of years, so it didn't happen all of a sudden. And when you put it that way, wow, it is a big of a jump. I have a little bit of ego, especially as a Colombian. I think my Colombian coffee is the best thing in the world, right? And as I started going into, as I wanted more of that fix of of pour overs and specialty coffee drinks at shops as I traveled, I would always gravitate towards the Colombian coffee. Would talk to my dad. My dad lives in Colombia. I have so much family that lives in Colombia. Like, hey, I'm drinking this coffee from here. I'm not seeing coffee from Quindío. And so that kind of was bothering me a little bit. My ego's telling me I should be drinking Colombian coffee. I should get involved in some way. Simultaneously, as I'm becoming now in my early 30s or late 20s, I'm starting to dabble in real estate investing as a way, again, back to, trying to get out of the rat race, passive income. I'm really passionate about that. My first tool in order to get to that was real estate investing. So I talked to my coworkers in sales and, classic sales people, like lazy, but with lots of money, and they would want to invest. So I was trying to partner with them on deals, and I did a couple. But a couple of guys would tell me, not interested, man, super cool. You're investing in real estate. Hey, but whenever you go to Colombia to go visit your family, you keep showing me these pictures and these videos of your trips. I'm like, yeah, I go visit coffee farms. It's kind of like my summer trips. I just go visit, and my uncle here, my cousin's friend there. It's just part of my normal experience of visiting family. Let me know. I want to go with you. I would love to do that kind of experience. If you ever do a business in Colombia, I'd be interested. And that was one of the seeds that sprouted in my head, like, oh, I can do something with capital that I couldn't do in the stateside, or it's harder to do. There's an appetite for people who want a international, fun, exotic, kind of different investment thing, but with coffee, which is my normal experience.
And you have a unique connection that they don't, right? You have this, you're a step forward, as opposed to, say, if I just said to my wife, hey, I want to go to Colombia and invest in a coffee company, it would be there'd be a roadblock, right? Because I have no connections in Colombia whatsoever. And you have this built-in, not only connection, but also internal, from the sounds of it, kind of passion for the place that you see your roots.
100%. I saw myself becoming the gateway for the average American, like what we say in Colombia, the gringo, who when you land in the plane in Bogota or something, people know, oh wow. But with me, I realized I was the gateway or the enabler for people who had the desire to go to Colombia to visit, to don't know Spanish and don't know what to do, but are just happy to be there and just want an experience that for me is a family experience, a pretty typical experience. For them would be, an out of this world. You're telling me I can go to a coffee farm and pick coffee cherries off the tree and walk and go on a burro and wear the funny hat and do the whole. I'm like, yeah, of course.
I always find entertainment, and I know I'm the same way. But when you go somewhere and you pay for the privilege to do the thing that the people that live there are just like,
exactly.
If you are in the early stages of your coffee journey, we want to support you. Check out the Coffee Smarter Education podcasts. Coffee Smarter is designed to enable coffee drinkers to brew a better cup of coffee at home. And Coffee Smarter Pro covers industry-specific topics for baristas, roasters, shop owners, and aspiring coffee professionals. You'll find both shows on your favorite podcast platforms or on our website at coffeesmarterpodcast.com. So you have this seed. This has been planted. You're kind of thinking about it. You realize you have the connection. From there to Botero Coffee Club, what's the next step?
Yeah, a couple of key things happen there. So I get pitched as an investor. I'm somehow put into the funnel, either through podcasts, websites, things, books I'm reading, on a investment opportunity in Panama. We're going to pull a bunch of investors together. You buy your own lot of land, but once you buy that lot, it's a co-op farming arrangement. You don't have to do anything, completely passive. You own a little slice of a Panama coffee farm, but you don't do anything, and you can visit whenever you want. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. But why, again, ego, why Panama? Man, I'm Colombian. Like, why am I going to invest in, if I could invest in anything, I'm going to invest in a coffee farm in Colombia. Then I saw another investment opportunity where it was a much more sophisticated one, which is the stuff I was learning about in real estate investing. Pulling investors' money together, buying a whole bunch of coffee farms or coffee land and trees in Colombia. No, you don't own the lot. It's just a pooled investment opportunity, and it was run by a bunch of Americans. I was thinking, wow, that's awesome. It's way more sophisticated, but there's no vacation part of it. There's no tourism involved in it. And again, ego, like I could do that. And the final straw that broke was I was talking to a kind of a mentor real estate investor guy, and I was telling him about what I was trying to do with apartment investing, all these big lofty goals in investing in real estate. And he said, "Why are you doing this? What's your why?" And one thing I'm very clear about is I know my why. My main why, after I boil it down to the bare essential, is I need to do something with my dad. I have to do something with my dad. I missed out on a lot of time with him as a teenager. I need to do something with him. He's like, just don't invest with me. He said, do not do it. Don't do this. Go do something with your dad right now. Like, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. And that was the final straw that broke the camel's back. And from there, it just became a question that needed an answer. How do I start a coffee farm, Dad? Well, your uncle is a coffee consultant. Your cousin's friend is a real estate agent that sells farmland. You're this, you're that. And so every question sprouted a new question. And I just kept working on it for probably 2 or 3 years about how to do this. And just going down the rabbit hole, I found out how to buy a piece of land, what the requirements are legally, the banking reasons, how things work financially there. But I sat on it and I kept working on how, but not taking action. And it wasn't until I met my co-founder, Tucker, a young 23-year-old, full of energy, active duty Marine, who said, "You're planning on doing what?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm starting a coffee farm in Colombia." He was looking for me for mentorship on real estate. And he said, "That is the coolest thing I've ever heard of. I'm helping you do that. I don't know anything about coffee. I drink this crappy black coffee here in the Marine Corps, but I'm doing it. Let's go." And I said, "No." And he kept pestering me for about almost a year. And then finally I said, "Fine, you can help me do this." And it wasn't until he was the kind of like the juice that got injected into my veins. I said, "Let's do it." And from there we actually started taking action and making it happen.
That's awesome that you had this kind of bundle of enthusiasm come along right at the right time for you, right? So much of life is timing, and having an idea and then having the energy and the confidence to pursue it, or willingness to ignore your own questions to pursue it, because ultimately you can always do a little bit more preparation. Always, there's always going to be something to learn, and so to have someone like Tucker come along at the right time is pretty cool. That turned into it. So you start the company. You're moving forward. How did you end up coming up with the Colombia, the American side of it, and how did you split kind of like how they were going to benefit each other? Because I assume that you're working on two different timelines now and you're trying to keep your focus. It's hard enough to start one business, much less two. And since they have the same kind of surname, it can get confusing maybe when you're trying to explain to the people that you're working with, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first part of it was talking to attorneys and their suggestions about how to actually do this legally. Everything I wanted to do, I wanted to make sure it was legal, above board, proper accounting, etc. So I hired a good attorney, and also a good attorney in Colombia, and they both were saying the same thing. You do have to have two different entities in order to pull off what you want to do. And as far as the vision and the strategy goes, I saw, and Tucker agreed with me when we first hooked up, was that they're mutually related, but they can be independent, where an American company can buy coffee from a Colombian company. It so happens that the Colombian company is also co-owned by us. Mm-hmm. But that Colombian company is sourcing coffee directly in Colombia, working in Colombia, producing coffee, milling coffee, and then selling it favorably to ourselves in the States, but also to anybody else in the United States that wants to source coffee from a Colombian company. So we saw pretty quickly that our disruption, how we can really disrupt things or do things differently, and how our competitive advantages with me being Colombian and speaking Spanish, having boots on the ground, people that I trust, my dad, uncles, cousins, etc., was having two separate companies, was having the American company and the Colombian company working simultaneously and mutually beneficiary to each other, getting to the point where we have two companies working together, where you get to the perfect kind of equilibrium of vertically integrated. People talk about vertically integrated all the time in coffee. I've learned that now. I didn't realize that it was not my idea, of course, but that's truly what we inspire to be. And our vision is to be along the supply chain of coffee, to have as much of it as possible. Because we do have both in Colombia boots on the ground. One thing we don't have is cafes. So that's just something we don't have yet, right? But what I saw first was we're going to be able to buy green coffee. We're going to be able to mill the coffee. We're going to eventually export and import. But for right now, we're going to outsource that. And once it lands, we're going to be here in the United States selling the coffee to green to roasters. We're also going to be selling our own roasted coffee. We're going to outsource roasting as a service for now. And then, maybe later down the line, we'll have our own cafes as well. But that's what we saw. We wanted to be a vertically integrated company to maximize our advantages in Colombia.
Very cool. It's you familiar with Sam Adams Brewing Company?
Of course, it's one of my favorite.
The first 4 years of Sam Adams, it's without the international component, but he realized right away, like, we need to build this brand in this company and create a system where we're self-sustaining before we actually we start doing our own roasting. I don't have the expertise for that yet. And so they actually didn't make any of their own beer for the first 4 to 5 years. While they were working on creating a system where they had the right factory location and the right people in place, and they had a name, and I was always inspired by that and thought, oh, like, you don't have to have everything perfect to get started. You just got to get started. That's the first step to getting to where you want to go. Obviously, the company is named after you. When I first saw the coffee club part of it, I was curious as to, oh, is this like a monthly thing? Is this a thing? But how did you kind of fall onto the branding of Botero? I'm looking at a box behind you there, and you're kind of representing a lot of different entities there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is synonymous in Colombia. My last name for Colombians. I mean, you hear my last name, if you know, you know. It's like saying freaking George Washington in the United States, right? Like, oh, that's super American. Well, Colombia Botero, there's a very famous painter with the last name. You see plazas named Botero. I mean, you drive down through cities, you see like dealerships named last name Botero. So, let's leverage that, obviously. And although it's a little uncomfortable for me because I am not a person that likes to, show off or anything. It does. I'm getting better with it, but it was great for branding. The club part came from, or the original idea of the business was to do a 3-phase project where we were going to get investors to, we're going to buy a farm, build a mill, and build vacation, tiny cabin, Airbnb things on the farm, like a 3-part combined business that all kind of related to each other. And the club part initially was that if you, the investor, invested, you became part of the club and you came along for the ride. You got to stay at the Airbnbs, at the tiny homes. You got to go and visit. So it was way too big of a scope of a project. We dialed it down significantly. We started just with a mill and sourcing green coffee from other producers for now. So the club more now is about, if you buy coffee through us, if you go to our website, if you buy our coffee, you have access to content that we're providing because we are in Colombia. I will show you the coffee trees where that bag of coffee that you bought from us came from. I will show you the farmer and introduce you, roaster, to the producer who produced that coffee that I'm trying to sell to you. Right? Her name is Sarah. Let's get on the phone with her and we'll talk to her. And she speaks English, and I'll show you her farm. And if you want to come visit, the trip to origin, let's go. And I actually just came back from a trip last week with a potential coffee customer of mine to potentially buy coffee from this producer, Sarah. So it's pictures, it's videos, it's check out our security dog. His name is Bruno. You want to see Bruno? He's super cute. He's a terrible security dog, but it's stuff like that. The content, be a part of what I'm bringing. The stories I would always tell about Colombia to my coworkers, like I was saying earlier. It's bringing to you, the buyer, be a part of our club and get to see behind the scenes what happens in Colombia.
You've mentioned your hometown several times. Let me know if I'm saying this correctly, but Quindío?
Quindío is the name of the
Quindío.
state, and the city is named Armenia.
If you were to describe what that place means to you and what it's like to be there for you, how would you do that?
Wow. Colombia, Quindío is a part of the country that isn't very, very old. So my family's roots are like the beginnings of the city. So much so that even the famous independence leader in Colombia, Simón Bolivar, he's like the George Washington of Colombia. As they rebelled from Spain and like went east and kind of liberated towns. Like he traveled through a farm that my grandfather's grandfather had. That was like the entrance farm into this region of Quindío. I actually just learned about this in this past week. It means a lot to me. So my dad came from a family of 7 kids. My mom 7 kids as well. They had both families had a lot of farmland. Their summers and their weekend trips are going to the farms. And, fast forward to the story, my mom and dad don't own any farmland anymore, which is another reason why I'm doing this. But it means a lot to me because growing up, my stories that I'm hearing from mom and dad are, oh, when I was a kid, we rode horses and we just were left alone for 3 days and we just went to different towns and traveled around the countryside and drank coffee and chocolate. And we grew all of our own pineapples and mandarins and lemons. And we milked the cows every morning. But we went back to the city. So for me, it's a big part of my story. My grandma helped build a church in the city of Armenia through selling empanadas, which is an epic story of volunteerism to the max. She hustled with her Colombian ladies in the town empanadas, which are the most delicious little half-shaped little baked pastries. I guess they're not pastries; they're savory. And she sold enough of them to build a church in Armenia. And the president of Colombia awarded her a medal of volunteerism for the country. So the state means a lot to me. If you go there, I mean, it's just gorgeous. You can't really put words to describe it. It's the only place in the world where these wax palm trees exist. This certain type of wax palm tree. If you ever look up Valle de Cocora, Valley of Cocora, and wax palm trees, you'll see what I'm talking about. And it's just gorgeous. It means the world to me. It's tough for me as a Colombian American. A lot of Colombian Americans like me, first generation, probably share this, but I'm Colombian, but I'm American. I bleed red, white, and blue, but hablo español. So there's some identity crisis there you grow up as experiencing, but now I've come to terms with that. I understand how to process that, and for me, it's just an immense sort of pride. Colombian people from that place are so friendly, so open. They want to feed you. They want to show you everything. Like, come meet my family. Please come to the coffee farms. Yeah, it means a ton.
I can appreciate that connection and also the disconnect between where you're from and where you feel most at home. And the answer never has to be that clean, realistically. You mentioned vertical integration earlier, but you have an impact on the coffee you're selling specifically, but also just generally speaking by, if I'm understanding this correctly, you're kind of creating an industry back home in Colombia, and you are essentially you already have the first customer. You are the first customer here in America, right? So when they get started building things, or when the processing mill comes online for the first time, they're not doing it with as much risk. There's risk for you on both sides, obviously, but you at least know that, hey, at least to start, I'm going to do this here, and the beneficiary is going to be me over here. And I wonder if you feel like you might be an example for other companies considering something like this. I don't know a lot of domestic coffee companies that look to own a part of their own farm. They look to develop trade relationships,
Right.
certainly direct trade. But do you see a future in which this is more common?
It's tough. I mean, I do see a future where this is more common, but again, it's risk to do business in another country without the language, without people you trust, without those boots on the ground.
You have a unique skill sets and connections.
But it's being done. And I've met a couple of people that are in similar situations, some variations of it, right? There's someone I'm very friendly here in the Northern Virginia market. She's a fourth generation coffee farmer, grew up in Colombia, moved to the States for whatever reason, and then 20 years later said, holy cow, I grew up on a coffee farm. Maybe I should sell coffee to the United States from my family farm. There's stories like that sprinkled here and there throughout the country, but it's not very easily replicated. It's not. And one thing I did, and by the advice of my cousin in Colombia, she was a business consultant, and she said, you should test the market first. So for years, as a geek of specialty coffee, as a consumer, and as a sales guy who travels, I go to every single specialty coffee shop in every city I travel to for work. And I ask them, hey, here's my story. Colombian, I got producers that I visit. They don't sell any of their coffee in Quindío to the United States market. They just don't know how. They've never done it before. Their minds are blown when I tell them that green coffee buyers are buying specialty micro lots that they're producing already at $9 a pound, for an example. The Colombian producer who has not heard that yet, it's like an explosion in their head that, they're seeing like, what, I can actually be profitable? This is incredible. It's hard. So in Quindío, this is a problem. This is one of my big drivers, is to bring Quindío coffee farmers who have not otherwise sold their coffee to the States, to the American market. So I've been testing the market on the buyer side for years to prepare for this, to kind of like see if there's an appetite for this. And with a resounding yes. Every time I got to talk to a roaster who really cared or who was really passionate about this business, said, absolutely. Not only would I be very interested in buying this coffee from your producer friend Sarah, as an example, but I would want to go visit her. And can you give me the ability to go visit her, be that intermediary for me to travel to Quindío, Colombia, this random place I never heard of, and meet her? Yes, absolutely. So testing the market first was a great way to find out that there's risk in everything, but there is an appetite for this market. But wow, I am unique in the sense where there's not many people like me that can put my left foot in the United States market, culture, language, business, and my right foot in Colombia, speak Spanish, do business in Colombia, be looked at as Colombian. I look Colombian. They know I'm not native as soon as I land, but they're like, you're one of us. You are one of us. And kind of blend both worlds. And I do know that that's my advantage.
Where are you at now with the companies, and what does the near future look like for you? We're in 2024. It's an interesting time in the world. Where do you see this trajectory going?
So right now, the first objective was to build in Colombia for a Colombian business was to build a dry mill. And we have just finished it and had our first external customer. Funny story real quick about that. The dry mill's up and running, but for weeks, we've kind of been spreading word of mouth in Colombia. Hey, we got a dry mill that's coming up and running in Quindío. There's not many publicly open for-profit dry mills in this region. There's a lot of private dry mills, but for public, we'll take your coffee and dry mill it for you and give it back to you for a profit. There's not many of them. So we saw that, and so we built the dry mill first. And then just as the dry mill finished last week on a Friday, and I was in Colombia. On Monday, when I came back to the United States, I found out that somebody drove to the farm with a truck full of coffee and said, hey, are you Botero Coffee Club? I heard through the grapevine that your mill is done or should be done by today. Can you mill some coffee for us? Completely word of mouth. As we're filming stuff to prepare for marketing and putting on social media in Colombia, to let the word know that the mill is ready. So the mill is done, and that's how we're going to start first. It was the quickest path to profit and to being a profitable company. In the meantime, though, we did buy 1,000 pounds of green coffee last year to test out what it's like to import coffee. We bought it from our first producer, Sarah. It's amazing coffee. So we're sold out of it. We roasted some of it, but we also sold it green to some roasters as well. And they created their own products out of it. The next step is to buy a ton more coffee, to have spot coffee here in the United States, but also to sell via contracts to some larger buyers. So we've now expanded our offerings. We're not just into the micro lot or nano lot business of specific producers. Again, I'm using Sarah as the example. But we're also producing now a more regional blend of coffee that's still a mid-tier, still hits the 80s and above, but has more of a, I think we're calling it a traceable regional blend of coffee, where I can actually tell you what the 26 farmers are that produce that coffee, and it's representative of the whole state of Quindío, but it's not a specific, single estate coffee. And the future after that is getting our own wet mill. That's the big next step. Because if we can buy the raw material from farmers at an above fair price, not just the fair price, because the fair price isn't very fair, but if we can buy it at an above fair price, have them focus on growing their coffee to the best of their ability with the assistance and the additional support of our technicians, right? Our coffee expert is an expert on how to fumigate, how to do the pruning, how to use certain fertilizers to get to the best specialty coffees you can get. We don't want to be in the business of owning thousands of hectares of coffee farm. We want to be in the business of having the coffee farmers do their job the best that they can to actually be profitable, make money, actually have savings, and feed our wet mill so that we can produce our own brand of coffee, as well as bring to the American market those micro lots and those specialty coffees from individual producers who we have relationships with.
I sense a lot of overlap in how you're viewing this with the some of the terms you're using, special estate, with whiskey, with cigars, with here's the producer, here's the name of the person who roasted this on the bag, that sort of thing. Kind of that curated
Absolutely.
experience for those of us on this side of it. Through this whole process, you've obviously come into contact with a lot of people. You've taken inspiration from a bunch of different places. What piece of advice would you have that maybe you could pass on to anyone listening, whether it's about working in coffee, whether it's about pursuing something of your own, but just something that's stuck with you that has mattered to you throughout this journey?
One of the things I would recommend the most to someone is a book and the moral compass that this book provided in the world of coffee. So it's a book called Cheap Coffee. And I messaged the author, Carl, a couple years ago as I was starting to get into this. I said, hey, networking, trying to meet people in Colombia doing coffee, blah, blah, blah. And he wrote back and said, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he basically said to the extent of, it sounds like you're really doing this maybe not completely within my values and what I'm aligned with on why I'm doing coffee. I'm doing coffee because of I'm trying to help, improve the life of the farmers without displacing them or without fluffing them up either, not overpaying them, but not underpaying them. Trying to help break this cycle of chicken and the egg scenario in Colombia where, in order to make more profit and increase their life and the quality of life, they need capital. But in order to get capital, they need to sell more expensive coffee. There's this weird kind of cycle that needs help to be broken in Colombia that capital really helps with, right? So he kind of responded to me very kindly, thanks, but no thanks, good luck. Then he wrote this book and I read it and I was like, oh, I get it. I was coming off as imperial gringo trying to, come in with my American dollars and disrupt things and change things, but not bring everyone up with me. So my first recommendation is make sure your moral compass is right. There's ways to make money in this world. Then there's plenty of disruption with bringing American capital into Colombia that you can do in many industries, not just coffee, avocados, cacao. Cacao is one I'm really interested in. But with coffee, please just keep in mind, whatever you do in Colombia, there's a lot of culture stuff, a lot of cultural landmines that you could potentially step on. And that book is a really great way to learn a bunch of those.
Anything we didn't cover today that you want people to know about this effort that you're putting forth?
I think a big thing I want people to know is that please stop drinking cruddy coffee. I've walked these coffee farm hills and I've seen these old ladies carrying these bins on their bellies, collecting coffee for very, very low wages. And the only way to get paid is they have to collect enough coffee to what they collect is what they earn that day. And as you delve down into the economics of coffee, it gets more impressionable on you the more you get into it, how if we as a society are propping up the cheap coffee industry, it's troublesome, right? There's By the way, I'm selfish. I don't want the coffee industry to go away. And the more we enable that, the worse it gets. Coffee is on the decline as far as things like being influenced by climate change. You got to go higher up the mountain to grow coffee in Colombia. Every year that goes by, the labor has become difficult to find there. There's coffee that's falling off the bushes, off the trees, without people picking it in Colombia. That's happening right now as we speak, and it's sad. So again, the more we as consumers help with that industry, the better. I know I'm talking to the right group of consumers here, whoever's listening to this podcast. But as you share this with your friends, like, just help expand the religion of coffee, right? Get them off that Folgers, get them off that cheap coffee that's perpetuating that industry. And the more we do that as a group, the better.
You mentioned early on that you grew up with cafe con leche and then dark coffees in the military. When you're in your travels and you pop into a specialty coffee shop somewhere, what are you going to order now?
My favorite right now, if I see it at a specialty coffee shop, it's going to be the traditional V60 pour over. It's going to be a natural. I love the natural processes right now. I'm obsessed with them. I just had an Ethiopian this morning that blew my pants. That blew my mind. It was really good. But I'm going Colombian every single time because I'm completely biased. And yeah, you got to go Colombian, something natural. Huila has some really good naturals that I'm drinking, but if I find one from Quindío, that's it.
I'm going to have to get my hands on some of this Colombian chocolate you're talking about. I eat a little piece of dark chocolate every single morning with my coffee. That's like my thing. And so if that's a Colombian thing, then I need to get on that path and give it a shot.
If you're buying health food, ethically sourced, organic, dark chocolates, look really closely on the label of that bag or that plastic wrapper. You might see product of Colombia on that. So Colombia cacao is now the number one best tasting cacao in the world as of March. It just won a competition.
Wow.
But also cool. In Africa, the supply has just drastically dropped. So Colombian cacao is on the rise, and I could definitely hook you up with some good cacao.
I'll take you up on that. Thank you so much for being here and sharing a little bit about your company. I'm excited to see where it goes and what happens. I saw the video of the dry mill coming, the machine working for the first time, and you could just see the excitement and the joy in that moment. We're chatting on microphones via Zoom or a video chat, but outside of these walls, there's this whole world of work and labor and effort going on to bring us the good coffee that we're drinking. So I appreciate some key takeaways from the podcast. And I hope Mo has a strong sense of self and place in Colombia. It is where he traces his family lineage.
I'm looking forward to it.
Mo is actually a first-generation American whose Miami upbringing was slightly different from that of his father's in Colombia. He joined the military at a young age, looking for an opportunity to travel and work with computers, both of which he did. After moving on from full-time military service into the reserves as a way to be more present while growing a family, it was his pursuit of passive income that led him to a pivotal conversation where he realized what he really wanted was an opportunity to build something of his own, and for that effort to offer more of a connection to his father and Colombia. Despite his realization and his efforts to prepare and do all the right research, he needed a push from a friend whose enthusiasm for getting started got him off the sidelines. That's a lesson I'm constantly reminded of when chatting with entrepreneurs. It's easy to fall into a cycle of research and preparation forever and ever and ever. It's important to remember that not everything has to be figured out or perfect to get started. You just need to start. Things will change and evolve as you go, and of course research and preparation is important, but at some point, you've got to take that first step. Finally, Mo recommended anyone considering a career in specialty coffee, or even just the pursuit of knowledge about the coffee industry, read the book Cheap Coffee, Behind the Curtain of the Global Coffee Trade by Ryan Woldt. I'll link to that in the show notes, which is where you can find all the important links we reference in this podcast, as well as our Roast West Coast newsletter, which you can find online at coffeepeoplepodcast.com. Thanks to Mauricio for spending some time with us on the show, and to you for listening and sharing it with your friends, for buying us a cup of coffee every now and again. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, tapping the follow button and giving us all of those lovely stars. Our appreciation for you knows no bounds. Nor does our delight at being able to represent and partner with our presenting sponsor, Roastar Coffee Packaging, found online at roastar.com. They'll help you tell the big story of your small business with the right coffee packaging to best represent your brand. That's roastery.com. We're also supported by some great coffee industry partners. Our legacy partners include Zumbar Coffee and Tea, Steady State Coffee Roasting, Coffee Cycle Roasting, Maria Coffee, and Cape Horn Green Coffee Importers. Crossings Coffee and Hasea Coffee Source Green Coffee Importers specifically support our Coffee Smarter efforts, and I'm very grateful for that because I need to get coffee smarter. Continually, I need to keep being reminded of how to do this thing that I think that I know. Our full city partners include Ignite Coffee Company, Ascend Coffee Roasters, Civets Roasting Machines, Me and My Uncle Coffee, Craft 42 Roasters, and Cozy Canine Coffee. Carolyn at Cozy Canine Coffee was on our show about a year ago, maybe a little bit more, and is pretty much the reason why I adopted my dog Keto. So follow their Instagram, and you might end up drinking some really great coffee, but also maybe adopting a dog. It's not a bad way to go. Thank you again for listening, sharing, asking questions, and being coffee curious. This show, the Coffee People Podcast, is part of the Roast West Coast Coffee Network and has been written, produced, researched, and recorded by me, Ryan Woldt. I hope this episode has found you happy, healthy, and with at least a thread, just the tiniest thread of sanity left, enabling you to make it through the day. Always tip your baristas and be sure to drink good coffee. Oh, well, if you love talking coffee, this is okay, but we generally go off on a lot of tangents. We'll get
I like
started
tangents.
on that right away.